Your Chicago Bears. I want to throw this out to you because I know you still follow them closely. And if I were the GM, you'd be pretty happy, I think, with me, but we'll see. I would say this. Do not trade your picks. You have the number 1 pick. You also have the number 9 pick. Kind of reminiscent of last year, a team that people started to understand a little something about, the Houston Texans. We already talked about they built something that is young. Their salary, because everybody is so young there, John, their salary cap is a whole lot different than everybody else as well. Now, at some point, they're going to have to pay the pony. But as of right now, when you look at that team, I think they might have been the team that had the most money to spend, and they spent it. I think they spent $165 million of guaranteed money this past offseason already. So gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can do when you've got players that are first-year guys, second-year guys. They did a great job in the draft last year. I think if your Chicago Bears don't put their head up their own backside, I think that they could do pretty well with the quarterback. Personally, I'd go with Jayden Daniels rather than who they're going to probably pick. But also, why not go for a receiver just to give the quarterback somebody to throw to that, is going to be great along with what they've already done, which is Keenan Allen, which they just picked up, and they already had a great trade with Carolina for another receiver that was there last year. They did a lot in the offseason, signing players, the right players, and they got all these picks in the first round, right? The 2 picks. They don't get very many more picks in this particular draft, John. So they got to do it right. I think they'll do it right. But Chicago was 7-10. It's not like they were 1-14, 16, whatever, right? Yeah. So I think this makes it really, really interesting, the fact that this is a 7-10 team that could get a great quarterback, hopefully for their sake, and a great wide receiver to add to what they've got. They've signed some tight ends. Chicago Bears could be back.
Yeah, they could, Pete. And, longtime Chicago Bear fans will know that they'll probably screw it up. But they sure could. They could go out and get somebody who might be in the C.J. Stroud category, somebody who might be in the Will Anderson discussion, because they could go for a defensive player too. Sure. There's those 2 receivers out of LSU, Pete, so they could pick up one of those and a great defensive player in the second round or whatever. But man, I think you're exactly right. And this is one of the reasons Pete will be a general manager someday, folks. He's interviewed a couple times, and is that if you have a veteran who's not in their rookie contract, that's where they get expensive. A rookie contract is cheap. A rookie contract is like a top rookie pick is probably $24 million or something like that, Pete. And that's not all one season. That's 4 years. I mean, so that's one of the reasons these guys are kind of ticked when they come out, because the veterans negotiated away their upside by saying, okay, well, rookie, we're going to have a salary cap on rookies. Veterans, no salary cap, anything you can get. And some of that is because of, Matthew Stafford, Pete, and some of the other guys who are coming out who were getting $60, $70 million deals as a rook when the veterans weren't getting that. And so anyway, long story short, the Bears probably will screw it up. And there's so many red flags around Caleb, Pete. Even though he's a great player, I would do what you said. I would take Daniels. They're not going to do it. So we just got to cross our fingers and hope that those red flags, like him, his leadership skills, if you want to call them that, in those last 6 games, that was pathetic. Yeah. But, everybody thinks that he should be the guy. Only a few of us think that maybe he should fall a little further down in the draft, but he's not going to.
I'll tell you a guy who might have fallen a little bit further down, but I wouldn't be as concerned about it. But T'Vondre Sweat, that giant defensive tackle for Texas, here's why. Had a DWI last night. Not so great. That's the one thing. You just got to do everything smart. You got to do it by the book. You don't want to be getting arrested for anything, let alone, driving intoxicated. But if he slips anywhere, John, that might be a guy that, I think look, I'm not saying you go after the renegades or the guys who do things wrong or whatever, but, I'm sure he's learned his lesson. I hope he's learned his lesson. I would probably call him up if I was a GM and say, hey, look, do you get the fact that you are in the media every single day under anything that you do that's wrong? and try to at least wake him up a little bit. But in any case, that big boy can play. And if he does slide to anybody for any reason like that, I think that would be a good move to snap him up.
That's another thing that Pete's remembering, folks, from one of his teammates, Warren Sapp.
Yeah.
Because I remember, Pete, that Sapp, there was a big rumor flying around that he had a cannabis problem, and he dropped in the draft, and Tampa Bay got him, and that guy never looked back. And literally nobody stopped him while he was a pro.
They didn't call it cannabis back then either, John. They just called it pot.
That's right.